Hello, everyone. Just before we start, we'd like to acknowledge the fact that we are able to record this podcast tonight on the traditional Miccosukee and Tequesta native lands in Miami, Florida, and the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, Mississaugas of the Credit, and Huron-Wendat indigenous lands in Toronto. I'm your host, Rachel Bishop of Cross Continent Chats podcast. This is episode 6. I'm in Toronto, once again joined by my friend and colleague Charlie Wyman from Miami, Florida. So there's lots of good sports news that happened over the past week, so let's just get right into it. So now that the NHL and the NBA have finalized their returns, well, the NHL has not finalized its COVID return yet, but the league is hoping to come back in mid-August with training camp in July. And the NBA has said it's returning July 31st at Disney World, which is awesome, which we talked about a couple podcasts ago, so you can check that out. Now that the leagues have finalized their returns, which teams and players are you most looking forward to watching when the two leagues ultimately make their respective returns, and why?
I will start with the NBA. The NBA is always exciting. Playoff basketball is always something very nice to see. Even though, he's a player that is one of the greatest players of all time. Personally, as a Miami Heat fan, I am not the biggest fan of him. I was a fan of him for 4 years, but not anymore. His name is LeBron James. There is no player in the NBA that shows up in the playoffs more than LeBron James. Playoff LeBron is just another level. Definitely am excited to see him and excited to see Anthony Davis, who hasn't nearly had as much playoff experience as LeBron, but he will show up, I think, as well. And the LA Lakers are definitely a force to be reckoned with. LeBron is also an ageless wonder, so it would be definitely very interesting to see him at his ripe old age into almost his mid-30s. Show up and try to compete for another championship. From the NHL perspective, I definitely think a player like Jonathan Huberdeau of the Florida Panthers will be looking to prove something. Jonathan Huberdeau, even though it has had a prolific year, it's the best year he's ever had. Well, he was projected to have the best year ever. And the Panthers are not even supposed to be in the playoffs. And they're going to get their opportunity to bring playoff hockey to Sunrise, Florida. Something very exciting for me, and as well as the few hockey fans that are in that area. Jonathan Huberdeau, Alexander Barkov, Evgeny Dadonov, that is one of the best lines in the NHL. And as we all know, if you look at the stats, the Panthers are one of the highest scoring teams in the NHL. They're going to be exciting to watch. It's going to be amazing. So I don't really want to talk about, we know Sidney Crosby's going to show up. We know Evgeny Malkin's going to show up. We know Claude Giroux's going to show up. We know, of course, David Pastrnak, Patrice Bergeron, and Brad Marchand are going to show up. So the player that I'm going to look to see shine, in my opinion, or at least I hope, is Jonathan Huberdeau of the Florida Panthers.
And, it would be fun if Florida won the play-in round. I believe they could be playing Tampa in the first official round of playoffs, which would just be so sick to see a battle of Florida in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's something that I've been wanting to see since I was a little kid, and I think Florida has the capability of do it. They have a very solid team. It all depends on the goaltending and if Sergei Bobrovsky is going to repeat the performance that he did last year in shutting out the Tampa Bay Lightning.
That's right. It was Bobrovsky.
It was. So hopefully he can repeat that form, and the Florida Panthers will make it and will get some good playoff experience. I'm not expecting a Stanley Cup, but I'm expecting them to get a lot of experience and to recharge for next year.
And conversely, on the Tampa side of things, every year for the past 5 years, we've said this really is their year. But I think this year, since they're not the favorites going into it, people kind of gave up on them, a la Washington Capitals. It's the year that people give up on them, that teams seem to win because the pressure is off. And I'm hoping that Andre Vasilevsky can stop a beach ball in the playoffs now. So I think Tampa will have a real chip on its shoulder, and that Tampa could actually do some damage.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun series to watch.
Yeah, they're definitely underwhelming when they play in the playoffs. It's a shame because they absolutely dominate the regular season. They have some of the most amazing players who are steals of draft picks. They're essentially the perfect team in the NHL, but somehow they're very underwhelming in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
So just quickly before we move on to the next question, just going back to basketball and players that are interested in, do you think that Kawhi Leonard will be able to have a repeat playoffs that he did last season when he led the Toronto Raptors to their first ever championship and was named Finals MVP?
I think he's going to be amazing in the playoffs yet again. But to me, the chemistry that he has in LA is not the same as what he had in Toronto. That's in my opinion, at least. He definitely will show up because this man is a playoff performer. He's a born playoff performer. He is a man who has single-handedly ended 2 dynasties, including my Miami Heats.
That's right. Load management, Kawhi Leonard.
In the 2013-2014 season. He ended the Golden State Warriors dynasty last year. So he is a playoff performer. He's definitely a player to watch. And if there is a Battle of Los Angeles, Kawhi Leonard versus LeBron James will be definitely interesting.
And do you think that Kawhi Leonard's old buddy, former teammate and now LA Laker Danny Green might be helpful for the Lakers because he knows Kawhi better than anyone because he played with him for, I think, 7 or 8 straight years until this season?
Perhaps. It is possible, but also players like to model their game every year. So they model, they change it, they upgrade it. So it is possible. Mm-hmm. Also, sometimes also in the view of sportsmanship, they don't always just, put in the dirty little secrets just to go after a player.
That's true. Yeah, I know they're good friends, so he might not. Plus, he's also not getting any younger, so he might not be as good against him defensively as he once was. So that's definitely something to think about for sure. Could be some good interstate battles if we have the Battle of LA, Intercity Battle, and Battle of Florida. That would be really fun. Those would be fun matchups. I'm hoping for both of those. Those would be some sick games. So continuing on with the NHL now. Now that the NHL has announced that the playoffs will consist of a traditional best of 7 format with reseeding, so going back to basically the old conference format for 1 year, with a team reseeding after the initial play-in round, which the league is calling it a play-in round and not a playoff round, which is weird. Do you feel differently about the NHL's return to play format? Why or why not?
Well, if you compare it to the NBA, who have essentially created a 22-team playoff format, but it also includes a short tournament to have the teams that were so-called in the hunt for a playoff spot to have an opportunity to make the last 8th seed of the playoffs. Considering that the NBA went with that route and created what I spoke about at least a pod or two ago about the excitement of the in the hunt teams looking for that final spot, the NHL was too rash on this. The NHL just didn't think of this properly. And sure, we've got this 2014 playoff format, but then they've just automatically added these teams into the playoff, which just decreases the amount of competitiveness for the playoffs. Versus the NBA, we're able to make it work. In the NBA, there's 13 teams from the West because it was such a competitive conference this year, and 9 teams from the East. So the NHL definitely kind of dropped the ball, in my opinion, and they should have just done something similar to the NBA model.
Yeah, yes, I definitely agree with you on that one. I think that the NBA model makes a lot of sense coming back with 8 regular season games, just the teams that are still in the hunt. And then, as you said, those battles for the final playoff spots are always so fun. And the NHL just totally got rid of that. And as we've already talked about ad nauseum, awarding teams like the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Rangers, teams that shouldn't be in the playoffs that had 3% chance now have a 50% chance of winning the series, whereas the NBA is actually going to make teams battle it out and fight for it so that the Larry O'Brien trophy at the end will have been properly earned, in my opinion, unlike the NHL trophy, which you talked about last week, which I think has an asterisk on it, right? So it's also interesting, too, because teams that they thought, like the Raptors, thought they were going to be playing the Brooklyn Nets. If they stuck with the second seed and Brooklyn was 7th, now that all goes out the window. So now you've probably done video on a team and now you have to completely change it and do video on another team because you don't know who you're playing now. So that's definitely interesting too. So it's both our teams are in the playoffs though, Raptors and Miami Heat. So that will be really fun. So
definitely be very exciting.
So I guess you kind of just answered this question, but kind of combining both NBA and NHL, how do you think the two formats compare? I guess just kind of going off what you just said.
Well, they they compare. One shows more competitiveness and it kind of shows more integrity of the league, meaning the NBA, versus the NHL just kind of found, in my opinion, the easy way out of it. And you can tell that the NBA and the commissioner Adam Silver definitely have all their ducks in a row. So they've got this organized. They have a date. So they're July 31st. It's all going to be at Disney World, thanks to Disney and ESPN. Disney also is the major sponsor for the Orlando Magic. That kind of makes sense. So with that, the NBA definitely has all their ducks in a row, and the NHL doesn't. They don't even have a return date. And what's interesting is they say it might be mid-August, but guess what? If something spikes, chances are it'll be September, then October, then November. So we don't even know. And it just shows that, the NHL is still disorganized. While this is really promising, and I would like to see playoff hockey, like I've stated previously, I would like to see my Florida Panthers in the playoffs. The NHL just doesn't have it together. And my opinion of just cancel the season because this is a mess, it still stands.
Of course, it's the NBA that's leading the way yet again. And the NBA just always seems to lead the way. I love how Adam Silver looked like the biggest nerd on the planet, but he's such a good commissioner, and he's a commissioner of arguably the most progressive professional sports league, but he doesn't look like it at all. It's great.
He learned very well under the previous commissioner, David Stern, who was a very progressive man, and he was probably the greatest commissioner in NBA history.
Rest in peace, David Stern, for sure.
Rest in peace.
So now moving on to some European soccer, European footy, as we like to call it. If Liverpool ends up missing out, well, now we know Liverpool's essentially going to miss out on Timo Werner, who's going to Chelsea. It's almost a foregone conclusion at this point. It looks like he will be going to Chelsea. Who should the Reds target as their next transfer option, or do they even need a transfer? Should they just look in-house, because the Reds have a lot of really good young academy players that they've helped develop and players on loan as well?
They should look at both, in my honest opinion. There are some players that, in my opinion, are ready to go. Of course, they have a formidable front three. Of Sadio Mane, Roberto Firmino, and Mohamed Salah. But the depth behind them is great right now, which you have Xherdan Shaqiri and Adam Lallana, who have the ability to play wing. But chances are they're going to be offloaded this season for money reasons. So before you even target anyone, you got to think about money. Because of this coronavirus, every Premier League team has lost a lot of money. And in my opinion, paying $55 million release clause for a player like Timo Werner, who could absolutely be a world-class player, is crazy. And it just shows that the financials in Liverpool must not be super confident if they can't pull that off, in my honest opinion. There are players, for example, that are in their early 20s, like Harry Wilson as an example, who has scored 7 goals so far for Bournemouth on his first season in the Premier League on loan. He should be able to be up to the Red squad full time. While it's great that we still have the front three in their prime, if they get hurt, if they get injured, we need quality. So there definitely are some players that are fantastic in house. We saw that with the FA Cup fixture, where the kids actually made it. The under 23s actually took the spot, headed by boss Neil Critchley at the time, and advance. But there are players that still need more time on loan because they're still 18 or 19 years old. So there's a couple folks in house that I think should be up, particularly Harry Wilson. If there's a player that the Reds should target, so they're going to miss on Timo Werner. Another player that's been talked about in the rumor mill is someone we've also talked about is Kai Havertz. He's a fantastic player. He's only 20 years old. He's got 11 goals and 5 assists in the Bundesliga this year. He's a superstar. But I don't. But recently, Real Madrid is looking to pay $80 million for him, or offer $80 million for him. And if they can't afford $53 million for Timo Werner, why are they going to spend $80 million on Kai Havertz? So there's another player that I think will be cheaper, and he's actually had a better season than Kai Havertz this year, and that is Marcus Thuram for Borussia Mönchengladbach. Yes, I looked that up to make sure I pronounced it right. Mönchengladbach. Wow, I'm so proud. With that, Marcus Thuram is a fantastic player. He has had 10 goals and 8 assists in the Bundesliga this year, and he's 22 years old. He's only 2 years under Timo Werner. With him, he could play on the wing. He can also play in midfield. I think he would be a quality, solid addition to Liverpool, maybe even better than Timo Werner. Sure, he hasn't exactly dazzled like Timo Werner with 25 goals, but he has the quality, and Klopp likes to take players that are projects.
Yes.
And I think with a player like him, he could make him into another Sadio Mane or a Mohamed Salah, in my honest opinion.
So, what do you think about someone else from the Bundesliga that is really young, who's also a superstar? What do you think of someone like Jadon Sancho possibly playing for Liverpool? Because he's English, he's from England. He would do really well in the Liverpool system. He'd be someone that Klopp could do a good job with, and he's another fantastic talent. What do you think about him?
Definitely, he's definitely got the possibility, and he's definitely got the quality. And there's no doubt in my mind that he could be an amazing player for Liverpool. But what concerns me with not concerns me with him, but what's concerning is his price tag, because he's been so in the news, and because he's been absolutely amazing, and he's the youngest player to reach 50 career Bundesliga goals
Yep.
ever.
Yeah.
He's going to be worth over 100 million.
You think?
So I think so. He's going to be worth over that. His move was already expensive to begin with, to Dortmund. So I'm expecting him to be 100 million. And if a team like Manchester United wants to spend over 100 million on a 20-year-old, go for it. The league is definitely inflated in terms of their spending and their money, and Liverpool is very careful with their big spending.
Mhm.
Also, Liverpool wants to have players that actually want to play for that team and nobody else. So if you look at their transfers, they signed Virgil van Dijk, at the time the most expensive defender in the world. He didn't want to play for any other team except for Liverpool FC.
Same thing
Versus, which is also something with Timo Werner. Timo Werner really wanted to play for Klopp because Klopp he sees as the best manager in the world. But the fact that Klopp has been speaking to him, the fact that Liverpool has been interested, but he also enlisted the likes of Chelsea, means that he probably wasn't fully committed to Liverpool, even though that's the top place he wanted to go, because he still entertained an offer from Chelsea. So
and
that's also part of the reason. That's what I think. Part of the reason Liverpool backed out of the deal and just said, you know what, we're done. Take him.
Liverpool didn't even make a formal offer, from what I read as well. So
They were thinking of paying his release clause, but when they saw that action in that player, that he was entertaining another offer, funny enough, Chelsea, um, Liverpool just kind of like, no, we're not going to pay it. You know, so that's what I think is also part of it. Is Liverpool likes to get players that want to play for Liverpool.
I'm actually quite surprised that his price tag was only 55 million euros for a player like that, because he's got 25 goals in the Bundesliga. I would thought that his deal would have been more.
You would think so, but that's also what it was when they signed his contract at the time.
Right.
Because
And
that's when they put the transfer tag. So 50 with if you're thinking of if you're thinking of contracts, 55 million is enough to get away with if he didn't do well,
right,
or it's a steal if he does amazing.
right, which is what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
But then you have the transfer fee on top of that, on top of his salary.
Well, no. If you pay the release clause, you can immediately talk to the player and discuss their salary.
A new salary.
Yeah, you can discuss the salary for playing at their team,
Because
the
I
new team.
because I'd read that he was going to sign a 5-year deal worth only 55 million euros, but Chelsea still had to pay the transfer clause. But 55 million euros seems really low for a player like that.
Well, that's a 5-year deal, 55 million. That's $11 million a year. That's actually quite a bit of money for a soccer player. $11 million a year, um, and they would have to pay the transfer clause, which the transfer clause is 55. Timo Werner's worth at least 75, 80 million,
So
and you can get him for 55 because of a clause in the transfer in the deal in the contract.
because he signed him
So
before he was really good.
essentially, yes. So if he's worth 80, 75, or 80 million pounds, and you're getting him at 55, then you immediately, you save $30 million.
Right. But that was still
Because
too much for Liverpool.
it was essentially that's why they've backed out of the deal.
Yeah. So you also were telling me this separately. You don't think that Timo Werner would do well at Chelsea under new manager Frank Lampard. Can you further elaborate on that?
Um, I'm not to be honest, I'm not I do like Frank Lampard. Lampard, he's obviously did amazing for Chelsea. I think he's a very good manager. He's already got a very formidable attack with Tammy Abraham at center forward. While Timo Werner would definitely be a huge boost, for me, it's the uncertainty. What if he just doesn't adapt to English football properly? What if they rush him in? Um, that's my main concern because the second that if a player that they paid a lot of money for doesn't do well, Chelsea's owners get involved and they just get rid of the player before they even have a chance to shine or a chance to develop and a chance to grow. So my whole concern is that Chelsea could do what they did with players like Kevin De Bruyne and Mohamed Salah, just get rid of them early. Obviously, their case is a little bit different because they were younger, but still, it was Chelsea's cutthroat owners that are just no nonsense, and I think they're a little bit too no nonsense. So let's say he plays 7 games and only scores 1 goal, they might bench him for the rest of the year. The owners might tell them to do that. So it's I hope he does well, but I'm not sure. I'm really not sure how he would do well. I think they have enough of a formidable front three, and I don't think they really need him, but they're going to get him. So it would be interesting to see how he fits into their lineup.
We're kind of seeing that with another superstar, Chelsea, young superstar Chelsea paid a lot of money on, Christian Pulisic, the American, also from the Bundesliga, from Dortmund. He got injured. He was playing really well, and then he got injured. And then ever since he came back from injury, he just hasn't been playing at all. So that's another example of someone who's not being utilized properly in Chelsea.
He hasn't been utilized properly in Chelsea. Something that has to be noted is that he was brought on. He was the last major signing that Maurizio Sarri, the previous manager, did. So it's a different manager. But
Mhm.
also, Frank Lampard knows how to work young players. He knows how to work his magic. So injuries is obviously a part of it. But when he has been on the field, he has been prolific. He scored a fantastic hat trick last season. And I think, sorry, this season, my apologies. And I think he still can. He's still young. It's not like he is a bust or anything like that, but it's just a question of keeping healthy.
Yeah, yes, I definitely think you're right about that. I remember when he first came to Chelsea and you were freaking out because you were telling me how amazing he was, and he also was someone that was in talks to go to Liverpool potentially, and also lost out to Chelsea as well.
Well, with Liverpool being a major club, everybody's in talks with Liverpool, and you can
It's
never
true.
really trust the rumors, and you can never take those to heart.
That's true. So moving on now away from European soccer, those are some very good discussions and some fun things to think about for sure. Moving on to multi-sports now. The International Olympic Committee announced on Thursday, June 4th, so that was yesterday, we're recording this on Friday. They announced that the Tokyo Olympics, which were supposed to happen this summer, which have already been postponed a year till next summer of 2021, they announced that the Tokyo Olympics could occur with fewer spectators in the stadium as well as athletes in quarantine in the Olympic Village, which does not sound like fun for anybody. The whole point of why athletes love going to the Olympics because they love experiencing a new culture and seeing things around the city they can't normally experience. And if they're just going to be in quarantine, doesn't sound like it's going to be a whole lot of fun. So the Olympics are already a huge financial burden on many countries and cities. Very few cities have been able to recover from it. Really, the only one in recent memory that's done okay financially has been London, of course, in 2012. Most cities do not do well after hosting the Olympics, most countries. And along with the new restrictions and, of course, the limited fans in stadiums, this is they're going to make less money than they would already make. And they're thinking of maybe even combining some Paralympic events as well. And the new restrictions and, of course, a delay a year is going to, should the restrictions happen, these are going to cost the taxpayers billions of dollars, taxpayers in Japan, when the Olympics probably already cost them billions of dollars to begin with. So, with this announcement and all that we know, and about coronavirus and the uncertainties and everything, and the fact that there's going to be Beijing Olympics 6 months later in 2022 for the winter, should the IOC just scrap 2021 and just move forward and focus on 2022, or should they try to cobble together some sort of Olympics that and similar to a regular Olympics as they can? What do you think?
In my honest opinion, they should just scrap it. I agree with you that the whole point of the Olympic Village is for athletes to meet other players from meet other athletes from other countries. Of course, historically with the Olympic Village, that is a place of fun, parties, and debauchery as well,
Yes.
where there's definitely a lot of culture sharing. I'll put it that way. So I can understand why they want to be quarantined during the Olympic Village because it's essentially gross if you think about it. So I can definitely see I can see that. Uh, and but that also just gets rid of the culture, that gets rid of meeting other people, that gets rid of all of that.
Mhm.
So in my opinion, they should just forego Tokyo altogether and just um, pack your bags and prepare for 2022. I think that would be the wisest option.
It's really, I do actually tend to agree with you because I think that they'd save a lot of money and they could really focus on having a great 2022 with hopefully no restrictions. And who's to say Tokyo, if as long as the IOC promises Tokyo another Olympics, which I'm sure they will, because very few countries want to bid on the Olympics anyways. But my main concern with that is, while I do agree with you, I just feel really bad for those summer athletes, especially the ones who are planning to retire after Tokyo and they already got pushed back a year and now it's going to be pushed back another 4 years, and they don't know what's going to happen. Should they come back? Should they retire? For athletes like that, that's really tough, because in Beijing it's going to be the Winter Olympics, so it's most athletes are not doing both winter and summer, right? And especially when you think you've already had basically 1 year of sacrifice and training and really intense training and limiting what you put in your body, and then you have to do that again for another year, and then to find out that your hard work has all been taken away by canceling the Olympics. That, especially the runners and the sprinters, just the stuff they go through, that's really tough on the athletes. I do agree with you, but I would feel really bad for the athletes in that opinion, because especially the ones who are near retirement, you work so hard to get to the Olympics, or the ones who wanted to have it be their first Olympics, and then would they have to requalify for the next Olympics, and then would they be facing up against another, the next group of athletes, and they would have to have a double qualification. That would be really tough, I think. It's definitely unfortunate.
It is, but in the end, the argument that the Olympic Committee is going to have if they forego it, which I think they will, is, well, what's more important, your safety or you going out and competing?
Yeah.
And they're going to play that safety card. And yes, it sucks for the athletes that are going to be retiring, but also hopefully they've had decorated careers in the Olympics. So also, you've done very well for yourself. Your name is etched in history, regardless of whether you win a medal or not. It's difficult, but again, they're not doing this because they want to. They're doing this because they're afraid of the coronavirus, and they're afraid of getting players infected, and it's all also a legal issue.
Well, I'm thinking, and I'm thinking more about, at some point, like we've been seeing with a lot of restaurants here, it's actually been more of a financial burden to stay open and do all those restrictions than it has been just to shut down. So that's what I'm kind of thinking with the IOC. It's going to probably cost them more money, as I just said, to stay open and have all these restrictions than it is just to shut it down and end it, right? If it has to come to that point. So we know that the IOC doesn't like to cancel the Olympics, and they've only ever done it twice.
Yeah, no, they do not.
The fact that they've already postponed the Olympics, and a lot of athletes, it was pretty much unanimous that they were in support of that. And, it depends if athletes are supportive of them canceling it next year, but I think that the IOC might have to bite the bullet, and they might have to cancel it if what I'm reading is true, is that all these restrictions are going to be happening. It just doesn't make sense for them to spend all this money on it when they could just focus on having an amazing 2022 with hopefully no restrictions by that point, right? So I definitely think you're right in that, for sure.
Yes. Another recent, relatively recent Olympics that actually had success, financial success afterwards, was Barcelona. In the early 2000s. That was the other city other than London that did okay with the Olympics. If they continue, a city like Tokyo should be able to afford it and shouldn't have any problems. That is such a massive city and a vibrant city. So that's something definitely to think about as well. Perhaps Tokyo can. I don't think they would be able to, but perhaps they can. If it continues, I think the Japanese will find a way to keep everything going.
Well, just further to that point, actually, the initial city that I believe it was the first city, and probably I think to this day, the only city to make money from the Olympics was LA in 1980. And this was because they did, I think it was 1988. Could be wrong on that one, but they did a really smart thing where they used all existing venues and they used all private money. So no taxpayers' money was going into it, so they weren't wasting any public funds. All private money, and it was all existing venues. So they had all the athletes stay at UCLA College. They had convention centers that they converted into grounds for fencing. They just upgraded existing venues, or they had temporary venues and would just tear them down after to avoid white elephants. And LA is hosting 2024, I believe, or 2020. I think it's 2024, and Paris is 2028. So that's another example of a city that will be able to do a good job because they've already done it, and they are able to show how it's done. But those examples are few and far between.
Yeah, that's something that, if it is the 80s, so we didn't have social media, we didn't have as much of a media presence in those things, which is really what's the major money which is what costs the most amount of money. It's media. It's not necessarily the athletes, because it wasn't as, it wasn't just in the news. It was, there wasn't instant messaging or any instant information. So with that, LA could pull it off. If they could pull it off in the same fashion at another Olympics, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, so far we have LA and Paris confirmed for the next Olympics. So nothing after 2028. So I believe it's Paris in 2024, LA in 2028. both the cities could probably pull it off. So I know London's been trying to have another one, so we'll see what happens. But it's going to have to be cities like that, or it's going to have to be a la the World Cup in 2026 when it's one continent with 3 different countries hosting it. It's going to have to be something like that. So,
yeah, perhaps.
So now that concludes our interview portion. So now we will have the sports spectacles segment where Charlie will provide his picks for the upcoming week of Bundesliga's games, because that's all that's on right now. But we'll soon have La Liga and Serie A and Premier League to talk about. So that will be very exciting. So take it away with your sports spectacles, Charlie.
Definitely an interesting week for sports in Germany. You definitely want to look into, it's essentially the equivalent of the FA Cup, but it's called DFB. DFB stands for Deutsche Fußballbund, or German soccer. Pokal, which is it's an equivalent of a League Cup or an FA Cup. Definitely something to watch. These are always fun to watch, but definitely one to watch is Bayern Munich and Frankfurt. Bayern Munich has the on-fire Alphonso Davies at left back, and we'll see if he can be a road runner and run all over the field again and score a couple of goals and assists. So that'll be definitely something exciting to watch. The nicest thing about having League Cups is also you get to see young players thrive. Something else to note is on Thursday, you will also see the first game of La Liga. The Spanish league is returned. The first match is Sevilla versus Real Betis. Not the most exciting matchup, but again, it is the first game of the season for La Liga. So definitely something to check out if you want to look at a type of football that's not as gritty, but it's definitely more flamboyant, and you get to see a lot of goals in that league. The other match that I would like to get into is regular Bundesliga, and that is Hoffenheim versus Leipzig. We've talked a lot about Timo Werner tonight, so expect him to show up against Hoffenheim. Hoffenheim is trying to fight for a Europa League spot, so that they will be working their butts off just to make sure that they can match up to Red Bull Leipzig.
And if I'm not mistaken, the manager of Red Bull Leipzig used to be manager of Hoffenheim. I thought I had read that.
Julian Nagelsmann, yes.
So that would be interesting. That will be interesting for him as well, because it'll be the team that, I don't know if it's the same players, but a lot of the players that he probably knows and team that he knows really well. So it could be
definitely. No, that'll definitely be interesting, because it's Hoffenheim's played with a different style, definitely a different way, different style and different system this year. So it'll be nice to match up kind of with the similar system that Nagelsmann had in Hoffenheim's playing against their old system. That's right. What I mean.
So that would be interesting for sure. All right. So thank you for those. So the Bundesliga's games are when?
So the Hoffenheim I'll repeat again, the Hoffenheim Leipzig match is going to be Friday the 12th of June. The La Liga match is going to be, that I mentioned, is Thursday the 11th of June. So definitely check those out.
And FB is when?
The other one is going to be on Wednesday the 10th of June.
Okay, so 3 days in a row of some good European soccer.
Absolutely.
Should be lots of fun for people to watch for sure, especially in Ontario when we're probably going to be out of the lockdown latest. So we have nothing really better to do. So definitely check that out. All right. Well, thank you very much for that incredible insight, Charlie. Definitely look forward to those games for sure. Now we get to move on to the fun portion. The segment I like to call it trivia, or when Charlie gets every question wrong. Hopefully he does better this week.
Fun for Rachel.
I tried to make the questions a little easier for you this week.
All right, let's see.
All right, so question number 1. Starting out with some hockey. At the 1989 NHL entry draft, this question's fairly easy, pretty easy. This player was the first European in NHL history to be drafted first overall. Who was he?
I have no idea.
You don't know that?
Nope.
Okay, it's Matt Sundin.
Okay.
I thought you would know that question.
I'm not a Leafs fan.
Yeah, but it's an important hockey fact. All right. Another hockey question coming at you. So you mentioned that you like Miracle on Ice. This is about the Miracle on Ice team. So who scored the winning goal for Team USA against the Soviets at the 1980 Lake Placid Olympics? Of course, the team won 4-2. Who scored the winning goal for that team?
I don't remember.
Mike Arizoni, the captain.
Good to know.
You don't remember that?
I do not.
Right. Well, this third question here, we're combining pop culture and sports yet again. So, which former NFL running back superstar quit football at age 29 to become a Hollywood actor? And he was in movies like The Dirty Dozen. That was his biggest film that he was in.
Hall of Fame running back.
I don't know if he's a Hall of Fame running back, but he was an NFL superstar running back. I'm not sure if he's in the Hall of Fame or not.
No idea.
Really? I believe it's Jim Brown. I'm just confirming, and yes, it was Jim Brown.
Okay.
He played for the Cleveland
Browns. Yeah.
He's considered to be one of the greatest
in history. He's a Hall of Famer.
He quit at age 29 to join Hollywood.
Good to know.
I thought you would know that. Pigeons batting zero here, man. All right, this next question's about soccer, European football. What does the term "old firm" refer to in European soccer? What does it mean?
Old firm.
The rivalry. What does it refer to?
Old firm or the rivalry? I'm confused.
Like the term "old firm" is a term for rivalry in European soccer, and so what rivalry does the term refer to?
It would probably mean the rivalry between cities or the derby.
Okay, which two specific teams? Which two specific teams and which two specific cities?
Liverpool and Everton.
No, it's Celtic and Rangers.
Celtic and Rangers, okay.
That's the team that's referred to as the old firm. Come on, man. All right. I thought these questions were easier. You got to get back your trivia there. Question number 5, last question. Hopefully you got this one right. Who is Ferdinand Louis Alcindor Jr.? He is an NBA legend.
Ferdinand Louis Alcindor Jr.
Yes. Who is he?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yes, correct. There you go. You got the last one right.
Good to know. I got one question. That's good.
All right. I thought you would get the last one. I thought that was a nice, easy layup for you. Okay. Well, Charlie's slightly better trivia this week. So, are those questions still too difficult?
I'll take the win.
I'll try to make them even easier.
No. Just pick your questions. I'll get better eventually.
All right. Well, people like the trivia, so that's all for this episode. Once again, I've been Rachel Bishop in Toronto, Ontario, joined by my friend and colleague, Charlie Wayman in Miami, Florida. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for episode 7 when we have some more soccer to talk about.
Have a great evening.